So whether it's a screenplay, whether it's a song, whether it's a story, whatever it is, whether it's a novel, whatever it is that God is giving you in a creative outlet to use as a ministry, a creative ministry, by all means, take the opportunity to do that. Get it published, get it produced, get it recorded, and get it out there so that people can experience the same type of joy and the same type of redemption that you're seeing in the project that you do.
Please be so kind to support us by clicking the like button and subscribing to our channel to be notified of all future content.
If you enjoy our content, please show some love by supporting KOG Entrepreneur and purchase from a variety of items through our online store at kogentrepreneur.com/products to choose from a diverse selection of clothing and brand merchandise.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this next episode of the KOG, that's the Kingdom of God Entrepreneur Show. I'm your host, Stephen Harris, and today on the show, we have a wonderful gentleman from the entertainment industry and the education industry joining us, Mr. John Pate. How you doing today, John?
Doing great, Steve. You?
Doing great. Yeah, it's such an honor to have you on the show today. You came to me from a friend of mine who works in the comedy industry, and he was telling me about you. And when we connected, I was really excited about this because you have a story to share with the audience that I believe there's so many people in the Christian community, the kingdom of God, that want to move forward with these, let's say, projects that God has given them, but they just don't know where to start or what do you do next? And
Right.
I think that your story and testimony is definitely going to kind of give some folks a roadmap. So anyway, if you don't mind, John, I would love to share a little bit what I have about you, which Mr. John Pate. He has been in the entertainment industry for 45 years, doing comedy, working with some pretty well-known, impressive acts. Currently, you work with the Huckabee Show. Am I correct? That's one of the things you're working on?
Right. Yeah. I periodically do the warm up for the show. I've done 4 of them this past year, and they use me once every few months on a rotation with some other comedians, including our friend from California who's been on the show. He's made an appearance on the show along with a lot of my comedy buddies from out there.
Nice. Okay. Well, that's one of the things. And the other thing I have here is that you were the communications department chair at Cal Baptist University for 25 years, correct?
Right. Yeah, I did that. And that was a kind of actually an outgrowth from the comedy world, because I had gone on the road in the heyday of comedy of the 80s and 90s, and there were comedy clubs everywhere. And I had the opportunity in the late 80s to start doing the warm-ups for some TV shows, both Designing Women and Evening Shade, 2 really big shows.
Yeah.
And one filmed on Tuesday night, one filmed on Thursday night. So I had to stay in town and get off the road. And by doing that, that left my days completely free. And I thought, well, what am I going to do with my days? And I went back and got my graduate degree at Cal State LA. And then by the time I finished my degree and finished the run of those 2 TV shows, all of the comedy clubs on the road kind of started drying up a little bit. So I took the opportunity to exchange it for another audience, and that was educating students. And I took the job at Cal Baptist University to begin with as their speech and debate coach. And then after 2 years there, they asked me to take on the chair duties. And so I did that very, very happily until 2020. And that kind of coincided. I had already decided to retire, but it coincided with the COVID outbreak. So I never really had to deal with all of the remote classes and remote learning that others did. But I think I retired at the right time. And then I moved down to Tennessee, and I love it here.
Very nice. Wow. such a span of opportunities in your life. It's really inspiring to hear all that. And just for the sake of our audience, kind of getting an idea, you mentioned Designing Women. I think that was a show with Delta Burke, right? If I remember correctly.
Delta Burke, Gene Smart, Dixie Carter, and Annie Potts were the four Designing Women. Yeah.
Okay, and it was like a
Yeah.
Southern beauty shop, or
It was a Southern interior design
okay,
business in Atlanta.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah, yep. I was around to remember that show. Okay.
I really, really enjoyed doing that show, and became friends with all of the people there. And really, that kind of I did warm ups for several TV shows, but that one and then the outgrowth of that with Evening Shade, those were really good shows and they were big hits on CBS too.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, shows like CBS was big in those days, like Murphy Brown, right? And you had a lot
Right.
of other really huge shows at the time. And I'm hearing you use the term warm up. So I personally know what that is, but in case someone in the audience isn't aware of what that means, if you'd be able to explain that.
Oh, sure. A warm up it's a warm up comedian. And because they film in front of a live audience, they want the timing of their lines with genuine laughter. And they have a studio audience of anywhere from 150 to 250 people. And when they bring them in, there's a lot of downtime between the scene changes and set changes and costume changes. And the show probably takes anywhere from 2.5 to 4.5 hours to film. If it's a videotape show, it's a little bit less, but for a film show, it takes a long time. So we would start the show usually around 7 p.m. and be out before 10 o'clock. But there were some times that it was even pushed until after midnight. So
Hmm.
they wanted the audience to stay there and they needed to be entertained. And they needed a comic to do that so that the audience would be entertained and ask questions and play trivia and do different things. You do some giveaways and keep the audience happy. So that was a job, and it wasn't an easy job. We got paid scale for Screen Actors Guild, so it was fairly good money
Yeah.
and a fairly good job, and the comics loved doing it.
Well, great. So, the reason why we're having you here, in case the audience is wondering, there was a film, an independent faith-based film that John was a part of creating called Faith Wins. It's great because it's on YouTube as well as other streaming platforms for free. And I found it to be an incredibly refreshing movie. It really hits on some interesting social needs that, let's say, the people of God have forsaken. Society has forsaken, for one, but we as the people of God are kind of called to help meet those needs by default. And so, John, I'm just going to let you explain, if you don't mind, the project, how it came about, and kind of give us enough to where we're getting the audience hungry to watch the movie and curious about it without giving the grand finale, so to speak.
Sure. Well, the idea actually originated with my co-producer, Rich Natoli, who also stars in the film. And Rich has a regular radio show in Las Vegas. He's had it for many years. And he also has a live show there that one of the big production shows in town at one of the hotels. And so he's been kind of a fixture in Las Vegas for the past decade or so. And he recently became a Christian about 3.5 years ago. And very soon after he became a Christian, he came up with a story. And the storyline, it was one of those things that he envisioned and he dreamt about. And he had a story, and he called me one day. He said, "John, I've got this story, and being a new Christian, I don't know how to go about it, but I want to put it to screen. I've never written a screenplay." And I said, "Well, I've written screenplays if you want me to work with you, and we'll kind of put this project together. So he sent me the synopsis of the story, and the storyline dealt with the really, really big neglected homeless community there in Las Vegas, because Las Vegas is almost a magnet of people who come there. They want to get rich and they end up losing everything, and they end up out on the street and forgotten. And so it's one of the very, very uh, bigger of the homeless areas around the country. And he wanted to touch on that, but he did not want to leave out the redemption salvation story, which he had been a part of as well, because it was as much his story as anybody's. And being a newer Christian, he wanted to convey that. He felt like that the two worked hand in hand. And we also got in touch with a homeless ministry there that was Tiger Todd's Hero Schools. And it was very interesting getting hooked up with them, because they weren't your regular food kitchen or homeless shelter or something like that, where you house someone or where you feed them. The goal, as stated in their doctrine, is we don't want to just feed the homeless. We don't want to house the homeless. We want to make the homeless not homeless. And you go through these different steps of ridding any type of addiction, seeking help and changing your life circumstances, but also finding a faith channel and seeking that to actually change lives. So it was a really good organization that we partnered with there. And we put together the story. We put together the screenplay. And after we wrote it, we're thinking, well, we like it, but will anybody else like it? So we decided to submit it to a Christian film festival, and it won for best screenplay. We thought, oh, okay, well, gee, this is pretty good. We've got a screenplay now. So what do we do? And we started talking to some different people, and especially people who had done faith-based films before. And everybody kept saying, gee, we like this idea. So we then thought, well, if everybody likes the idea, then we're going to do it. So at that point, we had to raise the money for it. And we thought about doing it the way that a lot of people do it, with the GoFundMe type of strategies. And we put up a page, and it didn't really get a lot of money. In fact, it got very little money, because I feel like that people have seen so many types of GoFundMe and Kickstarter type plans that they may think, well, is it really doing what it's supposed to be doing or not? So we said, well, if we're going to do this film, God's going to have to open some doors. And we thought that both Rich and I are professional entertainers. We will do some concert dates. So we started booking concert dates. We did multiple concert dates here in Tennessee and Alabama, in Las Vegas, in California. And we raised the money to have a bare bones amount that we could use to put together the film. And then we're thinking, well, if we are at bare bones, let's call in some favors and see what we can do getting some actors for this. And everybody that we asked said yes. In fact, some of the people who were in the film, even after we wrote them the check for the film, their acting, they turned around and endorsed the check and gave it back to us for the production of the film. And we thought that that was great. My university, California Baptist University, donated the university to be the scenes for about 30% of our film in Los Angeles. My brother-in-law donated his church in California, in Colton, California, to be a part of the church. My father-in-law donated his property to be a part of the homeless camp. In Las Vegas, a television station donated the use of their studios to film several of the scenes. And then when we got the entire thing finished, a big theater on Fremont Street in Las Vegas, the Notoriety Theater, donated their theater for our film premiere. So it was almost an outpouring of people who were willing to volunteer for this and be a part of it. And we were just so thankful that everybody did.
That's awesome. Wow.
So that's kind of a nutshell of how the film came about.
Yeah. That's really interesting that you're saying that, because again, not to give a spoiler alert, because I want everybody to watch it, because we're going to have the links involved. Excuse me, the links will be included in this video, and you'll be able to click on it and watch it for free. So this is not like, hey, go to your local theater or make some time. You know, that's great when that happens, but in this case, you get to watch it right now for free. But when I was still living in Los Angeles, actually, so Jeff Wayne was a comedian that connected us. I want to make sure I throw his name out there. He's a good
Yes.
guy, and he made
And he
that.
plays a great part in the film.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was kind of cool to see him on camera doing his thing. Um, but at the time I was staying in a room at Jeff's house, living with him and his son, who I had grown up with. And during that time, I actually worked in social services. There was a ministry / organization called the San Fernando Valley Rescue Mission. I worked with them for a year and a half, volunteered for another 6 months before and after, I was there. And as a result, I saw so much, because this was like a transition place. It wasn't so much the chronic homeless like we see in Faith Wins. It was more the families who have lost everything and have no place to stay. And it's a transitional situation to be the first step that gets them into transitional housing. And then transitional housing helps them get on their feet to where they can have an apartment or a house or whatever. And just story after story of normal working class individuals who hit hard times, or there was a divorce or domestic violence situation, or some type of bankruptcy, or some type, you had the husband with the wife and the 3 kids, and the husband's this big, strong guy who like bench presses 400 pounds. And he was working a construction job and got injured, messed up, family bankrupt. And so now they need a place to stay. And because we had that ministry element to it, we were giving people food, shelter, and Jesus. And it was
Right.
Go ahead. Sorry, John.
Everything that they needed. And
Yeah.
if you remember, one of the characters in the film, the beanie character, when he kind of told his story, he said, well, I was in construction and my back went out and I went to stay at my mom's place. You hear that story over and over and over again. And so it's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, so yeah, exactly. For that reason, it hit home, because that was a chunk of my life, which was a major turning point. And it was an experience that helped shape the way I see people, because there tends to be this dichotomy between, let's say, social classes, races, and things like that. And because I was in that situation, I was dealing with some people were very wealthy at one time in their life, but then it could have been a drug addiction or whatever, just brought them to the bottom. Some people were really educated. A lot of people were not educated, different races and all that. That helped me see people as human beings. You know what I mean? It
Right.
wasn't like I grew up on this part of town and you're from this part of town, so there's an awkwardness. It was just like, I'm dealing with you directly. And that shaped who I am. And I feel like this movie really confronts that same type of mindset, because the main character at one time had a very good living. He was doing well for himself, went through some stuff, and now he's seen himself living in a homeless encampment, starting fresh.
Right. Exactly. And the different people have different experiences, but I had so many people after the different showings in theaters, and we had a couple of, well, actually 3 different screenings in different theaters. And afterward, people would come up and they would say, I related to this part of the film. And someone would say, I related to this part of the film. And so we wanted it to touch people on multiple layers, on multiple levels. And we don't know what somebody's facing in their private life and their struggles. And their journey along the way, even in finding Christ and finding redemption and finding Christianity. We hope that is the goal, but we hope that people find that through the film, but also in their daily walk as well. Even you and I both know our friend Jeff. There was kind of the uh, uh, there was the Jeff before and the awareness of the Jeff after, really difficult life experiences where you can see God working on him, and God works on everybody that way.
Yeah, absolutely. So my question to you is, what is the big picture goal with this? Because it's been out for how many? It's been, we're filming
Now,
this on the 18th of February, 2023. It's been out for a couple weeks, right?
it's been out for almost 3 weeks.
Okay.
And as of today, it looked like we had 43,000 views within 3 weeks, which, according to our distributor, was rivaling a lot of top tier and top level films that they've released. And we were thinking, wow, that's pretty good to be a little independent film project. But they said, no, it's really getting a lot of traffic. And then also surprisingly, part of the algorithm is the people that watch it all the way to the end of the film. And their numbers, they say that they can judge that by the commercial breaks in the film. Uh, they look at it in terms of their commercialism, because they say that the commercials at the end of the film pay more to them, the distributors, than the commercials at the beginning of the film do. And they call it the flow through. They said the flow through audience of people that watched the film all the way through was surprisingly large. And we kind of wanted that. We wanted one scene to lead to something where people say, what's going to happen next? And gee, how are they going to rectify this? And what's going to happen next? And so we wanted people to follow the story and really be eager to watch it until the very end of the film. And even at the very end of the film, there is a surprise ending that I think people will not realize that happened in real life. And I'm not going to reveal it, but you've got to watch it to the end of the film.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was done quite well. Because the movie starts off going in one, at least you feel like it's going in one direction, then it goes into a different direction. Like, okay, what's happening? What's going to develop? And then the end, you're like, oh, wow, that was really cool. That
Well, thank
really
you.
hit on some very important, needs in society today. And, for sure, a happy ending without question. But the journey to the happy ending really kind of keeps you wondering what's going to happen next. And so I
Well,
found
thank
that
you.
very refreshing for that reason. Yeah.
Well, we're hoping to get 100,000 views by the end of the month and impress our distributor really, really to a point where they go, okay, let's see what else we can do. And they're doing their job, because now they have it on 6 streaming platforms, and we're looking at some others that they're trying to get it on right now. So it's available in a lot of places, but right now it's free on both Roku and on YouTube.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. So, so you said 100,000 is the goal. So audience, please watch it. Just click the
Please
link
do.
below.
Yes, yes.
And um so I like what you said, because you're saying if this reaches 100,000, this definitely is going to give, it sounds like, some more leverage to you all to have some more creative projects moving forward. Is that correct?
Yes, we're hoping to, in fact, Rich Natoli and one of our friends in Las Vegas are already working on a storyline for a semi sequel. It takes another path, but a semi sequel to this film. And we not only want it to be a ministry to the homeless, because out of the profits of our film, we're giving 30% of what we make, not what the distributor makes, but what we make off of the film. We are giving it to the Tiger Todd's Hero Schools to help them as well. And we want to be able to use the rest of the funds to do more films that actually reach out and touch people and actually help. I think that there are a lot of different avenues where people think, well, I can't make a difference. Well, surprisingly, even after having been in entertainment for 45 years, I didn't know that I could make a film either. I've never been the executive producer and on that end of film, but I had been around enough movie sets and TV sets and watch what goes on behind the scenes enough to know that it's a starting point. And had enough, at least, connections and savvy to make some things work and influence and convince people to sign on to the project.
Nice. Okay. And I'm curious. I'm just trying to put the pieces together based on what you said, because you had said that you started with the Kickstarter, and then it sounded like because you have had all these connections, so to speak, relationships along the way, you found a lot of people were signed on, and then they kind of gave back, saying, "You don't have to pay me for this." So is that sort of how this whole thing evolved, or was there certain
Well,
steps that?
we had committed, and we told everybody at the beginning of the film it's not going to be much, but we had to do several things. We ended up having between 12 and 15 Screen Actors Guild members to be in this film.
Wow.
But we had to get a non-union waiver to get them to sign off so that we didn't have to pay that particular scale. But we told everybody we're going to write you a check, and again, several of them decided to donate that back to us. But even the people, the big names that we had in the film, Bruce Baum and the legendary Rich Little from Las Vegas, they all agreed to do it and do it for very, very minimal prices, if not free. And all of our comedy friends who have headlined in Las Vegas wanted to do it. And everybody we asked said yes, even if it was a small part, one scene or two scenes, they would say, yes, I want to be a part of it. And I even had city council people in Riverside, California, who fast tracked our filming permits and things like that to make sure that it went through and there were no hurdles along the way. Many times you find, especially cities and municipalities, that will say, well, we're not sure about faith-based projects, and they'll throw up a roadblock or something. And we did not encounter that anywhere along the way. So we kind of knew that God was opening some doors and doing some things that we couldn't normally do to get this film done. And so we think, hey, if you're opening the doors, we're going to walk through them. And we just praise God for that.
Wow, that's huge. Yeah. Wow. So that being said, of course, everybody watch it. It's free. I'm going to continue to emphasize it. This is your call to action.
Yes, please do.
Now, since we are the Kingdom of God entrepreneur, let's say there is somebody in the audience watching this and they have some type of film production idea. Where would you tell them to start in getting this ball rolling?
I would suggest kind of a three-pronged approach. First of all, have the product and have the story and have your screenplay and your project ready to go, and then make some connections with people who have produced or directed faith-based projects and faith-based films. Our first affirmation was a wonderful lady. Her name is Cherie Wilson, and she's done Christian faith-based films, but she was also one of the stars of the TV show Walker, Texas Ranger.
Nice.
And so she and her husband have done faith-based films. And we talked to her, and we talked to Louise Duarte, who, along with her husband, have done a lot of films for Hallmark and a thing called the Godwink series. And we got input from them about how to do something on your own without trying to get a big studio or some big production company online. It's wonderful if you have a story compelling enough to get that, but 99% of the time you're not going to get that. And So we just decided if this is going to be done, we're going to have to do it on our own. And then the third step is don't let anything stop you. Like for instance, if Kickstarter or GoFundMe doesn't work, have a plan to raise your funds, have a plan to mobilize, and have a plan to walk through the doors if God opens them for you. We were very fortunate in the fact that myself and Rich and several of our entertainer buddies were ready, willing, and able to do concerts and raise the funds for this when other avenues didn't allow it. But by all means, if this is something that you feel like God wants you to do and God does open the doors, then don't let anything stop you along the way to get that done. There's an old saying, if the door doesn't open and God opens a window, then crawl through the window. So I think that's really true with people. If there's any way for Satan to stop a project, he's going to try to stop it. But I believe, like yourself, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people with great creative and ministry stories that just have not gotten out there yet, and they're just waiting to be done.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that is. I'll say it like this: I'm very blown away to the point where I'm almost speechless. I mean, I'm fumbling through my words in this because, again, when I watched that video, I was like, wow, because I had that 2 years of my life where my full-time focus was homeless ministry. I have a very different perspective, and that helped me to see people as people. So it doesn't matter whether I'm here in, Charlotte, North Carolina, seeing someone wealthy, or I go to Kenya to my wife's country and see, normal street people or whatever. To me, it's like, you are created in the image of God, period.
Exactly.
Now let's build the bridge to where we can connect with one another. And I think that lack of human intuition, right? We're not wired that way. Most people aren't wired that way. Maybe a small fringe standard deviation of people are. But if that type of natural awareness were to be common, people would feel more respected and appreciated and stuff in life. And that's what gets a lot of people hitting rock bottom. I mean, would you agree? Tell me.
Exactly. Exactly. And, many times, especially our Christian friends and churches and congregations feel like we have to do it all. And in many cases, we're not called to do that. There are hundreds of references in the Bible where we're just taught to plant the seed. And if we plant the seed, then God's going to grow that, and there's going to be a harvest. I mean, you can't stand there and yell at the seed and say, grow, seed, grow, and anything happen. God is going to be the one that is going to reap the harvest. The passages that say one person plants, another nurtures, another reaps, but God is going to be the ultimate reward in terms of how that is going to turn out. And I think that too many people think, gee, I can't do this all. Well, you're not going to be called on to do it all. There's going to be help along the way, and if God is in it, then God is going to have the harvest at the end.
Yeah. Wow, that's huge. Well, thank you, sir. Did you have any type of words you would like to share with the audience? Any type of advice for entrepreneurs or anything that, other than what you've already shared?
Well, I just hope that people will kind of never be discouraged. If you've got an idea of anything creative to do, go ahead and use that outlet and create it. I've not just, obviously in entertainment, I committed and I started out even in the secular world at the Comedy Store and the Improv in Hollywood. And I was working with a lot of acts who they could care less whether they were clean or dirty, and they didn't care. But I always kept it clean, and people knew going in that I was a Christian, and I didn't let any of those things stand in my way. In fact, just a little side note, we were talking earlier about doing the warm-ups for TV shows and designing women. And when a show called the way I got into it, when the show called the Improv and they asked the owner, Bud Friedman, they said, we have a warm-up artist and he's dirty and he's turning off our audience. We need somebody clean. And he immediately said, oh, get John Pate. I was the first name that came to his mind because I was the Christian comic at his club. And so it's actually afforded me opportunities to get work just by virtue of being a Christian. And it's never stopped me along the way. I don't think anybody should let being a Christian be something that stops you from doing the ministry that God's called you to do. I've written Christian songs. In fact, I've got a gospel quartet song that's coming out. We'd just gone into Nashville into the studio and laid down the tracks for it, and we submitted it to some people in a young gospel quartet group. A couple of sets of brothers in Indiana said we want to put it in our next album. So whether it's a screenplay, whether it's a song, whether it's a story, whatever it is, whether it's a novel, whatever it is that God is giving you in a creative outlet to use as a ministry, a creative ministry, by all means, take the opportunity to do that. Get it published, get it produced, get it recorded, and get it out there so that people can experience the same type of joy and the same type of redemption that you're seeing in the project that you do.
Wow, that is awesome. Well, thank you so much, man. I really hope that we're going to be able to continue these conversations as time goes on and see where the journey leads you and you know, the progress with not just Faith Wins, but any other projects you put your hand to. That would be really exciting.
Well, thank you, Steve. I really appreciate you having me on today. And I hope that not only everybody watches the film and gets us past that 100,000, I hope they tell 10 people and those 10 people watch it and we get 1 million views and the story just keeps traveling on and ministering to people.
Thank you for joining us today, John. Again, such a pleasure to have you. And I do want to say to the audience, thank you for tuning in to this episode of the KOG Entrepreneur Show. Please watch the video that we have the link below for Faith Wins, free watch on YouTube. Tell family and friends because we want to see this cross 100,000 views on YouTube. And go beyond that and open up some other doors for more projects like it. God bless you, and we'll see y'all next time.